Welcome, everybody, and happy Monday to the last Monday of March. Kelvin, we're sailing through. We're about to jump into Q2, and I know you're just crushing your goals in Q1 this year. But hey, as we do a little banter, first off, Kelvin, congrats on your boot camp in the Netherlands last week. Let's just hear a quick synopsis of, I heard perfect attendance, although one person is going to get a letter in the mail from you.
Yeah, exactly. No, we had perfect attendance. We had a huge group of people learning everything about M365 and SIP. And it's one of those events that I love giving away free education, and having everyone in the room just being constantly focused was absolutely amazing. We were also lucky that we had a really cool location. So we had a location on like the 27th floor, I believe, of a building in Rotterdam, so you could see the entire city. Absolutely amazing. And it was really fun just educating people for a boot camp in my hometown.
That's awesome. Congrats. Phyllis, you were at RSA,
Yes,
and I'm sure no one was speaking about AI there.
that's
So,
right.
yeah.
I said in their pre-banter, went before the call, you can't spell RSA without AI. So you go down the showroom floor. Um, AI is everywhere in every single tool to help realize efficiencies. Obviously, I will give a shout out, Kelvin. The different nations had big spots on the showroom floor. I did stop by the Netherlands. There was actually a company that caters towards MSPs. And I'm like, well, you should talk to Andrew Morgan. But more importantly, they gave out the little is it straw waffle? Like,
Snow waffles, yes,
yeah, the
yes.
little cookies. And I ate those up. So that was,
So delicious. So delicious.
I was like, this is the best goodie that I've gotten.
Oh, one thing I did hear, again, I can't remember who. Ash, there were this one marketing agency I heard did the AI diner where I guess the bots or whatever would literally just make something for you. And they sold it to two, like the exact same idea to two separate organizations. So wondering how that played out. As somebody that specializes in marketing, that can't go over well. I can't imagine post event, right?
No, I'm surprised that they would make the choice to do that. But I mean, certainly from our clients, we do a lot of in-person. That's one of the things that's growing in this time of AI and increasingly digital is in-person experiences. But of course, our clients want to layer on some sort of an AI activation. So I'm not surprised about that part, but doing the same activation at the same conference, where's the creativity?
Yeah, there wasn't. It was certainly, I think, Claude Code or whoever spit out the exact same thing. So let's just wanted to share a few things and get perspective. So we have. Let me just make sure I can share that. So, what are your thoughts on this, Ash? You're studying AI in Oxford. When you look at and you read the article, it makes business sense. They're spending, I think it was something out of in compute $1 million a day. It's on the decline.
Costs are astronomical. Yeah.
Yeah. Is it just an economic thing, or is it the fact, which I'm going to show momentarily, that Claude seems to be kicking the proverbial crap out of OpenAI right now in terms of activations? What are your thoughts here?
I think OpenAI is at a critical moment where they need to focus their strategy and pick their key plays. And I think that's what they're not really talking about at the moment. I wouldn't be surprised if there are some more big announcements coming from OpenAI. But right now, they are having their market share eroded, and they really need to be focusing on their key strengths and how they can differentiate.
Yeah, for sure. Bob, what are your thoughts on this? I mean, to talk about differentiate and market share, this is Claude. I have another screen. I won't show it, but just trust me that you see OpenAI kind of doing this, and you see Claude doing a hockey stick straight up like this.
Yeah, this is one time when I honestly think this is an analytic example of people voting with their money. Honest to goodness, I think some of the changes in I mean, really, because you can almost track this back to a specific day where it really started going hockey stick. And I think there was I think we all know what we're talking about related to that. There were some changes about that, but I think that's really what that is. And honestly, I have, I use them, I use all the models, but I find myself in Claude 9 out of 10 times, for the same reasons, because I'll make a run at it in GBT and it's not exactly what I want. And I mess with it 2 or 3 times and I go to Claude and get exactly what I want, or much closer in the first run. So I just think it's, again, listening to your customer base, responding to your customer base, and sometimes not being the favorite person helps, I think, is what they got a pretty good they got a little bit of a boost here recently.
I wonder if it's also just exposure. Like, not enough people were exposed to Claude yet at at the moment of the announcements, and then suddenly everyone's like,
Yeah.
what does this company do? Oh wow, it's actually better.
That's a good
And
point.
everyone just moves to the better platform, and I do like that. I love everything that Claude is doing. The entire idea of how do they call it? Co-work again? Yeah, co-work.
Yeah, co-work.
Is absolutely mind-blowing. Like, being able to
that's
use
great.
something to do things on your own machine. It's so cool.
Kelvin, are you guys utilizing Claude Code as you guys continue to build out SIP?
On the Cyberdrain side, absolutely. We massively use GitHub Copilot, which has the option to use Claude Code's Opus model. By far the best model for code out right now. It's just it's so accurate. Yes, it is on the expensive side, but it is so creepily accurate with analyzing how your code base and your patterns look, and then repeating the same patterns. I dare say that maybe 20 to 30% of our code is AI written at this point, which is really good with a team that is so involved in a language that doesn't really lend itself to AI, because we're PowerShell heavy, and that's not a language that's very much interpreted well by the models. So it's really good. It's really good to have that high of a percentage. At the MSP side, at Lime, we actually massively use Claude for a lot of things. Our entire help desk uses it to rewrite emails. As simple as that. Like, remove all these spelling mistakes. Make sure we hit the right tone of voice. We have a branding guide in a skills.md file that we just give to all the users. And the tone of voice, the way people speak to our clients and all that kind of stuff is automatically done better. And I dare say that just making less grammatical mistakes of tickets also improves just in general the quality of each ticket, because people no longer need to have a lot of cognitive ability to read through these things. They're able to immediately see what it's about. So yeah.
Got it. So Phyllis, let's do one more, and that is this. And just as this Team PCP is certainly having its heyday here. So I'm curious, as you and the team start to think about the controls, the next version, we had service provider management, which got added, which was fantastic, right? Thinking about supply chain is, with these attacks now on libraries and, literally walking through the door. I mean, these are not like, these are literally just, prompt. One was prompt inject. Well, no, it wasn't prompt injection. Sorry. It was just literally credentials. And then this one as well. Are we going to potentially see some stuff? Well, first, what are your thoughts? Second, are we going to potentially see some different ways of supply chain and AI in the controls?
Well, first, one of the reports that I read said it was like a misconfiguration, number one.
I can't imagine that.
And so I think number one is always configuration management is huge, access controls and all of that. Another comment is just, just like MSPs are like kind of the more bang for your buck for attackers, because you have reach into so many other organizations. So are these kinds of attacks, right? It's like a SolarWinds or something like that, where it's like, oh, I'm going to get into the life cycle and then I can, hit thousands versus just one organization. I'm going to hit everybody who, uses this tool or whatever. And so I think not just supply chain management security wise, but just supply chain management in general of what are we going to do when we're so reliant on single source type things like a CrowdStrike. That was not a major attack, but it was an internal error. But it was, it's like one thing in one one tool or library that affects, could affect worldwide is very interesting. So as far as controls and AI, we're going to be releasing soon some AI papers on security around LLM, the agent, and the MCP. Of course, the guiding light is the controls, and we're doing these kind of mini sessions to figure just that out, Andrew. How is it that we need to update or modify controls based on the fact that we do have AI, based on the fact that all these kinds of attacks are happening, and we're getting small communities together to break apart the problem and figure out what's the next best step.
Yeah, I applaud your involving the MSPs this time. It's been huge, and I think it's going to shed a lot of light on how the controls are represented for SMB, for sure. By the way, as far as scale, Light LLM had 95 million downloads last month. So these are staggering numbers in terms of it might make some of the other libraries like oh gosh, what was the code that the library that was so
Log4j
might make that look trivial compared to some of these libraries.
Absolutely. I believe that with supply chain attacks in the future are going to have so much more attack surface in general. Look at OpenClaw. It was downloaded somewhere over 1 billion times. Imagine something leaking from it. It's horrifying. It's horrifying.
All right.
I think it's going to change the dialogue on open source too. I mean, honestly, right? Because that's where these are coming from. And by the way, I think to Phyllis's point, I think a lot of this has to do with the controls that are already here. They're not being adhered to, and processes aren't being followed. So none of this is new that they're playing games with, but they are using standard operating procedure, and they're exploiting living off the land with how things work. It's not, it's not flaws. It's just process failure.
Right. And the credentials, the pad or whatever that they exploited was configured in the non-recommended way, right? So
that means wrong. I mean, it's saying non-recommended way, but that's wrong. So in case anybody wanted an interpretation of that, it's right and then wrong. Clear.
All right, Phyllis, not that you'd harp on Control 4.1 ever, but let's get on into it with that. All right. So in kind of perfect segue, the reason I wanted to kind of leave it there is, as we look at AI, typically, in this show from a supply chain perspective and an attack surface perspective, we looked at what happened with these SSH keys and cloud credentials and all these things getting exfilled. And now, I know they're not, of course, what happens next, right, Phyllis, is this is going to go to the dark web, and we're going to see more initial access via, identity. Right. This is not anything new. It's just more of the same. So about a month and a half ago, I had the pleasure of hearing Ash, our guest, Ashley Bogstad, main stage on a panel with the CVP of ServiceNow and some other folks. And I just mesmerized by her knowledge of AI. And she focuses in the marketing world, working in our ecosystem with some of the largest hyperscalers, ISVs, and MSPs. And I was eager to have her share some of her perspective as also somebody that's not only working with those organizations, but what I think is very, noteworthy, Ash, is your willingness to continue to learn, and so much so going to Oxford as you run a business, but studying AI full time and running a business full time. So how about a little overview? I know I probably gave a lot of it away, but a little bit about your background, and we'll turn it over to Phyllis and we'll get right on into it.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me. And it was great to connect to Andrew at the Ultimate Partner event. It's just a great community, and I meet so many wonderful people in there. But yeah. I'm Ashley Bogstad, the founder and CEO of Transcends. We're a go-to-market agency, so we specialize in creative marketing, doing campaigns, and we really help clients like Microsoft, Intuit, In the MSP world, supporting somebody like AvePoint, and they're selling through a channel of MSPs, for example, with MSPs directly, security providers like Fortinet. And it's really about effective marketing strategy and also ecosystem partnerships. And all of that is being turned upside down in this time of AI. We think a lot around new customer acquisition, so lead generation and what's happening in the world of advertising, really important for MSPs. And as Andrew said, I made maybe the crazy decision to go back to school. And I think I was just reading something, AI starts with the C-suite and the CEO has to lead the AI program. And I don't know, I must have just read an article, or it just resonated differently one day. And I took a step back and actually thought critically about it. Am I leading AI strategy for my own organization? And the answer would have been no at that time. And so I started to get really interested in digging in and learning, and applied to a program at Oxford, was shocked that I got in. And now I'm doing this international commute every 60 to 90 days. I'm over there for a few weeks, really getting immersed. We have a cohort of 60 students, and I'm probably learning just as much from them as the professors, but some real great insights, and hopefully the audience today finds them interesting as well.
Very cool. Yeah, and it's great that you took on that role, because one of the challenges, I'd say, Kelvin, we find in a lot of our clients as MSPs is the CEOs don't necessarily take on that role of being concerned about how AI is used in their company or how security is used in their company and governance. So good for you.
Yeah, and one of the journeys that we're on at the moment on the business owner side of the fence, wearing that hat, is we're actually investing in an MSP right now. And so I have been live going through the process of meeting with all different types and sizes of MSPs. And so I do feel like I can bring some of that outside perspective today. It's been interesting thinking about how each of them market themselves. How responsive are they? What are the actual factors that we're internally considering when we're making this selection choice?
Well, we got a good international one for you on the call here if you want to talk to him.
That's right.
Yeah, amazing.
Go ahead, Phyllis.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, you are working with MSPs, ISVs, and hyperscalers like Microsoft. So it's, you're not just focused on, one type of business or one type of, vertical. And so when you look across these different types of organizations, what's the common go-to-market problem that you see across three? And then why did you end up building a company around it?
Yeah, great. I think as a marketer, we think about differentiation and niching ourselves a lot. And I didn't want to be a marketing agency that does everything for everyone. And I was super interested in technology and innovation. I used to work at Microsoft. And so we started from that point, which is our clients are going to be large business to business technology organizations. And we're really going to focus our knowledge set in understanding how that particular industry operates. But in terms of working within tech, we do work with all different types of technology companies. And some of the commonalities that I'm seeing, I mean, one huge one in the MSP world, security. Everyone is concerned right now about security. And the other one, I think, Phyllis, you opened up the call talking about RSA, and you couldn't be walking that trade show floor without a conversation around AI, artificial intelligence. So in terms of themes, go-to-market themes, security and AI are very strong. Some of the other commonalities are figuring out, what does AI mean in my sales, in my marketing? How is that being disrupted? How is that changing? What do I really need to be aware of? But the number one thing that all of these companies want is leads. Everybody wants new customer acquisition. Everybody wants to grow their business. And to some extent, that doesn't really change for us as a creative agency across those different partner types. We're always staying up to date on what are the latest channels, what is creating breakthrough. That's kind of the space that we play in.
Interesting. I mean, and so true. We all nodded when you said leads. We're like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
Our number one offering of all time is called Leads in a Box. It's a 90-day lead generation program. We tailor it up and down and for different sizes, different specializations and industries, but exactly leads, leads, leads.
Yeah. And so, you just talked about studying AI at Oxford at the same time, while running your own company. And I applaud you for, being the leader and actually saying, oh, I do need to lead in this. We often talk about in this call, like as far as like security and trying to sell that to your customers, you really have to have, that kind of C-suite support. We talk about across the board, period. So I applaud your efforts in that. And what have you learned that has most changed how you think about MSPs and what they should be doing right now as far as AI?
Yeah. So I'm a Canadian. I think Andrew and I bonded over some ski stories. I live on the side of a ski hill. So I'll start with a Canadian. In 1964, there was this Canadian media theorist named Marshall McLuhan, and he's super famous for this one saying, which is the medium is the message. The medium is the message. And what he's really getting at is that it's the communication medium itself, not the actual content or message that it carries, that is what is shaping human interaction and perception. So this is really important when you think about buying behavior, which is key for MSPs when they're wanting to, say, acquire new customers. So the question that I've really been studying at Oxford is, from a marketing and sales lens, what is this medium of agentic AI and what kind of impact is it having on customer acquisition? So one of my professors, he's a great guy, Eric Zhao, he has this theory that for the last couple of decades, we've been living in what he calls the attention economy. And in the attention economy, it's about selling to human beings. It's about human eyeballs, going to a search engine, getting lists of recommendation links. And this entire engine is fueled by advertising. But what he's talking about is that this is all changing in the era of agentic AI, where it's about machines making purchase decisions on our behalf. And how does that disrupt the way that we're engaging online? And one of the things that, giving space for your curiosity and taking the time to sit in a classroom and learn, I've never really dug into legal cases and legal precedents, but one of them that I'm now following really closely is Amazon versus Perplexity, because this is really a precedent-setting case that some people are saying, could be the end of online commerce as we know it. So the whole concept here is about machines selling to machines and machines making purchase decisions on our behalf and disintermediating the entire advertising platform. And I think when I talk to MSPs, this is one of the things that I keep getting asked, which is all of a sudden, our buyers are shopping essentially on LLMs. They're not coming to our website anymore. They're not clicking on us from a list of recommendation links. How do I actually optimize my business for this age of agentic intelligence that we're really just at kind of the very beginning of? And maybe just kind of layering in here one of the first principles. I think I had this aha moment. It's very basic, but AI is a prediction engine. That's really all that it's doing. It's predicting what is the next thing. So the better that your company can show predictability, say in a purchase decision, the more high you're going to rank in these LLMs. So you want to be thinking kind of, it's a different mode of thinking, this predictability.
That is interesting. So when an MSP comes to you and says, "Hey, our marketing isn't working," what do you think is underneath that? Is it that predictability, and then how do you become more predictable or better? I want a higher predictability score so I can get more leads and turn those into actual, sales.
Yeah, I imagine you're going to see marketing agencies all over the place coming out with things like trust scores and credibility scores. This is where the whole environment is shifting. But when MSPs talk about their marketing not working, I'll go beyond the basic marketing stuff, but there is some basics in there. Sometimes it is just that level of consistency and commitment to an ongoing program, but we'll bring this into the age of AI. So, marketing is a lot more than doing social posts or your website. In this AI world, it does need to build trust and credibility. To make this real for the audience, because I'm sure we have lots of MSP executives or owners or marketing teams maybe listening in, there's some basic tangible stuff. So number one, customer testimonials. One of the things that AI loves to crawl is very specific use cases. Now, sometimes that can be challenging for MSPs because you work in a security landscape and your customers don't want to talk about the fraud attacks that you've defended them against. But you can definitely make case studies that, don't mention the client's name or are a little bit more generic, but they're still specific enough for the AI to pick it up. One of the things that I love is like a basic 1-sentence case study. This is the kind of content that LLMs really latch onto, and we can talk about some examples later. The other one is, since I'm ex-Microsoft and I work in this Microsoft hyperscaler world, a lot of my research is focused on how hyperscaler partnerships really help companies gain credibility in an age of agentic AI. So for example, I'm sure many people listening in are big Microsoft partners. Are you doing your deal registration inside Partner Center? Increasingly, when Microsoft logs in and they're looking at what MSP to recommend for something, their field sales teams, they're being shown things like, what is the volume of deals that you've uploaded? And very specifically, one of the metrics that's being prioritized at the moment is, what is your most recent win rate? This kind of data is really influencing essentially that marketing engine. Are you getting referral business from your partners? Like, what does that data hygiene look like?
Kelvin, can you speak to that at all? Like, it's somebody that's heavily involved and invested in Microsoft. And congrats, by the way, on your recent Intune partnership as well.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. Kelvin's doing all sorts of things Microsoft in terms of his platform. But Kelvin, any experience in that, of how investing?
MSPs massively underutilized the partner portal, and it's absolutely crazy. It's something that I spoke about at Ride of Boom as well when we had the session with Microsoft. I think it's because Microsoft has introduced a lot of complexity there as well, where there's different types of partners. There's ISVs, there's CSPs. Everyone is using the same partner portal, and because of that, it gets very confusing. But using the deal registration and getting leads from Microsoft has gotten us some massive clients. A 1,000-seat client came to us specifically from Microsoft just because they were up for license renewal. And it's not just, there's a lot of things like the co-marketing funds that Microsoft has, which are especially if you sell even a little bit of M365. Let's say you're a small MSP and you have only like 10 or 20 tenants under management. The co-management for like 10 and 20 tenants, for between 10 and 20 tenants, the co-op funds are, I think, around 5K a year. And that is still really good marketing money that you can spend as an MSP. Because for a small MSP, that 5K is probably double of their marketing budgets that they had available. It's insane. We just underutilized a lot because of past complexities and programs changing rapidly.
Kelvin, I'm glad you mentioned that. I'm just going to, for all those listening, I'm going to put in chat the Ultimate Partner. This is coming up in Bellevue, Washington, right next to Microsoft. If you really want to utilize and get access to the resources that Kelvin and Ash are mentioning, I strongly encourage the investment of your time, energy, effort. Vince Menzione is world-class. And every MSP that I've known that has invested time in that program, going to one of his events, it pays for itself many, many, many times. So yeah, go learn how to access the funds that Ash and Kelvin are talking about. So Phyllis, back over to you.
I mean,
well, I'll just add to that, if you don't mind, really quickly. I mean, exactly. What I love about what Kelvin said is a lot of MSPs are not doing this. So, I think of that blue ocean, red ocean, like go to where there is competitive opportunity for you. And while Microsoft isn't perfectly set up to benefit MSPs, and I agree that it isn't. They kind of have these binary partner types of the company who's building software, the SaaS or software development company, they're now calling them, and then you have your services businesses. MSPs who do work in the model and take advantage, there's a lot there that you can look at. I mean, they have tons of cybersecurity funding, for example. That's one of the buckets that gets the most incentive. And whereas Microsoft historically was very focused on the enterprise space, so unless you had huge customers doing huge volumes of M365 licensing, Azure consumption, it's not the model anymore. 70% of Microsoft's incentive money, the actual dollars, are going into their small, medium business segment that they call SME and C. And, Kelvin's example there was just spot on around the 20 licenses and the 5K. That can be really powerful.
That's why we're seeing them show up at Write a Boom now. And, as you mentioned, I think Microsoft's the first to admit, and they did at Write a Boom. We had several directors there. No, we're not perfect. We're here to listen. But their willingness to now try to figure this out and understand our business models that's pretty awesome, considering it's the world, depending on market cap days, whether it's NVIDIA or them, you're talking about the largest market cap or company in the world. So I'm excited about where this could go. But Phyllis, back over to you.
Listening to you talk about, you should have a customer testimonial, so on and so forth. It reminds me back in the olden days where you wanted your website to be the top hit in Google. And so you're trying to make your website, hit like the Google search engine algorithm. So that's just very interesting. It's just, morphed now into, what you're talking about, like the machine to machine purchasing. And so, kind of related to that, when an MSP does have a website, a lot of times they talk, there are these buzzwords: proactive, trusted partner, we treat you like family. Honestly, when I worked at the NSA, we used to joke, like, you could never sell a product to the government unless it said security or high tech. It was always like this, every single tool that came across our desk to test was always had that in there. So we've got these terms on MSP websites. And so, why do you think that happens? What's the real business cost of it? And how is AI generated content making problems worse rather than better?
I mean, I do think that those things are important for MSPs, being proactive, being a trusted partner. But even going through this decision-making process right now of reaching out to a bunch of MSPs, what demonstrates proactivity better than any sentence on a website is actually being proactive. So the number of MSPs that replied to our filling out the contact us form within 24 hours was 50%. So right there, it's like, if you're not getting back on this SLA of 24 hours, to me, you're subtly but powerfully communicating that actually proactivity is really not at the top of your priority list. So I would think about that, and AI and the tools and applications that are out now can really help with that. I also think about the value of differentiating. Many MSPs are looking to be acquired or private equity. And one of the things that definitely drives your value up is being able to differentiate yourself in market. So going beyond those buzzwords. And so how do MSPs actually differentiate? There's lots of different ways, but maybe some of the top ones, and Microsoft is, just because we were talking about Microsoft, they're huge on this as well, but having a vertical expertise, having customers that are focused in healthcare, in legal, in financial services, that gives you a ton of credibility. Now, I think in different markets, we work globally. And if you go to a small economy somewhere like New Zealand, you can actually be quite successful doing everything to everyone, because you have 5 million people in that country. But when you're in a market the size of the United States, it's a very different game. And the more that it takes some courage, I find. For some reason, people don't want to say no to things. They want to say yes to everything. But if you can narrow down your focus, and this also feeds into LLMs and AI, they want to see that expertise as well. That's going to really, really help you. Having distinct security compliance offerings, having frameworks, Microsoft as well, having really strong hyperscaler partnerships and talking about those credentials, like Kelvin mentioning, the latest success with Intune. Those sorts of things do really help to more meaningfully differentiate you in market.
So we do have a question that said, kind of along these lines, like, what kind of use cases or case studies should you be putting on your website to show that differentiation, or to get like AI to like stop and say, oh, this is worthwhile?
Yeah. So again, you might not be able to mention specific customers. Hopefully you can strive for that because they're more powerful. But even something like, we help companies of 50 to 300 users with their M365 in the legal space do X, Y, and Z. Something that has a degree of specificity there. You're naming products. You gave a count on the number of users. All of that is really going to help with the AI engine. And I think that's, sitting down with your leadership team and getting really clear on what's in that kind of one-page business strategy plan, and getting that kind of content actually out onto places like your website.
Ash, can I ask you a quick question before we head over to Kelvin? Just real quick, because I want to make sure there's time for Kelvin and Bob. As you go through this, so is this your first time purchasing with an MSP?
Personally, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So here's my question. And this comes from, if you ever heard of Brent Adamson, he was the author of the Challenger Sale. He's now.
Yeah, I love the Challenger Sale.
Yeah, he's amazing. We had him as a keynote speaker, and the keynote was around his latest book, which was Framemaker. And he pretends, and all his research, his recent research, is that one, customers lack confidence as the number one reason in buying a decision. And he's very specific. He's like, not confidence in you, the MSP, confidence in their ability to make a low regret, high success decision. And good MSPs or good sales organizations help take themselves out of the equation of, oh, you got to buy from me, and let me tell you why we're so great in 20 years experience. But more so, Ash, help you with what questions to ask amongst your leadership, right, to choose a good MSP. So without going and role playing it, what are your thoughts on Adamson's latest research? Does that resonate with you?
Yeah, it does. It does resonate with me. I mean, each company is going to have a slightly different list of requirements, but distilling down what's going to be really important to you. I think with an MSP, I mean, for us, definitely responsiveness is one, operating across global time zones, knowing that they understand our specific industry versus just IT more generally speaking. In our case, we want to look at we're looking at organizations. So many organizations now, MSPs are huge. They're PE backed and they're part of these massive organizations. And, there's some concerns in our leadership team around whether we'd get the level of service from a really large organization. There's benefits of platform, which does, that's a positive, but having that kind of local feel, to Phyllis's point, the family feel, it's interesting because that came up in our own conversations as well as something that is really important. And ultimately, when you're bringing in an MSP, you're trying to de-risk your business, period. You don't have enough of the in-house expertise. It's not making it to the top of the urgent, important kind of list of priorities. So it makes sense to outsource that. But what failure looks like is outsourcing that and coming to an outcome where you're not getting that kind of responsiveness and engagement.
Yeah, and that last part is why indecision happens. And he argues that helping your client navigate the right questions to ask, not only the MSP, but amongst your team, Ash, your chief of staff, like you guys, how do you make, and so the MSP that can guide that is also the one that tends to rise to the top according to
So the MSP that can guide that. So if you think about the sales process and you document down your top 15 sales questions and you turn that into an FAQ on your website with detailed responses that are maybe 600 to 900 words, that is the optimal kind of content for AI to read and surface up. And then when someone goes to their LLM, Claude, ChatGPT, whatever it is, and they start asking these questions to the LLM, which is how the sales process now works, you're actually going to get cited and come up in a top result.
Do that right away, Kelvin. Floor's yours.
Awesome. There's so many questions I have for you. It's when Andrew and I spoke about you coming on last week. It was, I think, last week, somewhere Friday or maybe this weekend, and I immediately got excited because I, next to my SaaS business, still have my MSP, and marketing is the bane of my existence. It is absolutely dreadful. We used to have a marketing girl that unfortunately left to go get her PhD in marketing, and I got super frustrated because without her, we are completely adrift. There's so many questions I have for you, but one of them right now is one of my biggest frustrations that I see other MSPs doing. If you look around on LinkedIn, and right now, if I look at 2 or 3 competitor pages, or if I look at 10 competitor pages, they all have the exact same post, the exact same message, the exact same format. Sometimes a custom image, but most of the time, the same image there. How do we as MSPs that don't have hours to spend on actual content or producing things, how do we actually make sure we differentiate ourselves enough and not be a copy of the 50 other MSPs local, or look exactly the same or perform the same playbook?
Yeah, I mean, I do see this all the time. I have a slide that demonstrates exactly what you're saying, where it's the same post and all they've changed is their logo. The Merriam-Webster word of the year in 2025 was slop. And it's about this AI generated media that is showing up everywhere online. And almost instantly, Satya Nadella, CEO of Microsoft, responded to that. And that got picked up by a lot of press. And essentially, Satya is just saying, I don't think that calling AI generated media slop is really a useful construct for media discussions. But there's a solid point here. And I think what slop is getting to is this internet is dead theory, which is like 99.9% of all content on the internet could be AI generated by 2030, which has, people highly concerned about the quality of content online. I think the risk for MSPs is getting lost into what I sometimes call the sea of sameness. So this is what you're talking about, the same stuff regurgitated. It's amazing that vendors like Okta, CrowdStrike, Microsoft, they make vast quantities of content available to partners of all types, including MSPs, to repost and share. And I think that is positive, but there is an onus on the MSP to do some degree of customization that is, keyword is meaningful, and that can be really time consuming. So, I mean, we all know that AI generated content is now being produced faster, cheaper, and increasingly can produce high quality storytelling at scale. But while some people, celebrate the innovation and the efficiency, sometimes your customers might see that and have a really negative reaction. And that reaction is something that just lights me up. Like, I find it really fascinating because it's not necessarily about taste or aesthetics. It's also neurological. So I'm not a neuroscientist, but the way that I've come to understand it is that when we encounter AI generated media, our cortical striatal circuit kicks in. And this is the part of the brain that's responsible for pattern recognition. So it's comparing what we see online or in an advertisement with what we expect to see. And when there's inconsistencies there, you get that kind of ick feeling. Psychologists will call that the uncanny valley. So that's what we don't want out of our marketing. And the case that you detailed there, Kelvin, that's what we're giving people, the uncanny valley. Like, they know we're just posting this AI slop. So how do you kind of get around that, especially if you're a smaller business, you have limited marketing resource? it'll be a recurring theme of this podcast, but AI, AI can really be a help here. And I think many people in your audience, are more technical. I'm not so technical. And even 2 weeks ago, I sat down because we're producing content for different executives at Microsoft. And this one guy, he has a very unique voice. He's a mountaineer. He spends a lot of time in the outdoors, and he wanted to have this unique point of view come through on top of all the mandatory Microsoft content that he needs to repost. So I just sat down with Copilot Studio and I coded an agent. And this agent layers on a degree of personalization. So I feed it the generic Microsoft post and I ask it to give me a unique point of view that would be representative of this person. And I'm getting, and it's pretty good. It's like sometimes 90%. Always keep your human in the loop and do that human overview. But it really doesn't need to take, I think time used to be a constraint. I would challenge that it's not as much of a constraint as it used to be. It's really about applying some of the tools and the innovation.
Awesome. That actually leads me to that very much gives me a segue into my next question, because content has always been king for ages. But right now, you Google something and Gemini answers the question for you. You no longer visit these pages where the question is presented to you. It's something that I've noticed myself. I'm no longer Googling to find pages. I'm Googling to get an answer, and I immediately get it. And that is happening everywhere now. What does that mean for MSPs? How should they be thinking about content and SEO and all of these things, especially now that, we're living in an AI age where information is available in a completely different way?
Like, how scary is that? Like, just to take a moment of pause, because I think at the opening of the call, Andrew was talking about, the .com boom, and there's some differences, but also some big similarities. I mean, we've been operating on a model where we want to get exposure to our websites, clicks on our links, and that this is not theoretically changed. Like, this has been turned upside down, and it's incredibly disruptive for many companies. There's of course also opportunity in that. So SEO stands for search engine optimization, and it's this whole attention economy model. AEO, you might think, or I even thought, is like AI engine optimization or agentic engine optimization, but it's not. AEO stands for answer engine optimization, because what is AI? A prediction engine. It's predicting answers. So if you're feeding it the answers, then that's going to help you to rank more highly. This is where I come to things like AI loves FAQs. AI loves the one sentence case study. So, we help companies of 50 to 300 users in healthcare pass audits with a standardized Microsoft stack, including Intune, something like that. The engines are really good at picking up, but it is a big shift for organizations. I think one of the positives for an MSP is that a lot of MSPs do have internal documentation around like help desk support and common queries. They tend to be more documentation heavy than some other kinds of, say, technology organizations. So getting more of that content online is really important. But again, it's sort of this shift in thinking around what is useful, not being afraid to be more specific online, and in investing in, like, having an FAQ page, having a blog. Channels to market are also important. We're all in the business to business space. We live on LinkedIn a lot, but social media platforms are starting to come down. Substack is going like this. Direct to fan platforms are really, really increasing, and thinking about those channels as well. Something like Substack leans to longer form content, which is also very AI optimized and searchable. So I would say, don't be afraid to break out of the Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. A niche channel can actually be very powerful for you in market.
Ash, I know we're limited time, but Anne put a great thing in chat. with limited time and resources, can you rank maybe the top 3 things MSP marketing teams should focus on? If you just had to get down and tactical.
Well, I'll say some things that I haven't said that are maybe a bit challenging, but number one, in-person experiences. So back to Phyllis's earlier question, how do MSPs differentiate themselves? One of the things that we're seeing a rise of as AI continues to garner speed and humans aren't needed for as many things as they maybe were previously is actually the rise of niche local in-person communities. When you talk about family orientation in your MSP marketing, how are you actually living that value in a very real way? I would, especially if you're more locally oriented, I would really, really encourage throwing a dinner party, bringing in an expert speaker, getting people together in a more community-oriented way, which is kind of cool because it harkens back to that .com era. And when you had, like hackers hanging out or these kinds of communities can work really, really well. So think about in-person experiences. Number 2, get your website organized. So think about your FAQs, those top 15 sales questions, your 1-sentence case studies, all of that is really important. And number 3 is who are your technology partnerships with and what are their kind of optimization engines, if you'll allow me to use that term. So how do you work effectively with someone like Microsoft where you can get that referral engine spinning for yourself?
Awesome, Ash. Thanks. And I know we put you on the spot there, but maybe part of the reason like Kelvin's most recent thing was so successful, right? He did a local event in Rotterdam and it was packed, right? And that's just living testament to it right there.
Yeah, I think it's the realism of just meeting actual people instead of potentially talking to an agent somewhere.
Kelvin,
I still have a couple of questions, but I also really wanted to get to Bob's questions because they.
Let's do one more with you, and then we'll go to Bob. You got a quick one there we could do?
I am pretty sure I have a quick one. You already answered so much about SEO, and like I love the idea about answer-based SEO. That's so cool.
That was really interesting.
That was really interesting. One of the things that you said was you frame trust as reducing uncertainty. So for an MSP trying to differentiate on something other than price, what are the things that we have to really address? And you already answered it a little. Andrew already jumped to that a little bit. But what are things that you really have to address in practice, not in theory? Like or even name one of them where you're thinking like that is the one thing that MSPs have to focus on.
Yeah, I'll give you a couple quick ones. So I like to think about this. We talked about the answer engine in the form of questions. So what are your customers wondering? What do they want to solve for? So one of the things are you, MSP, actually going to show up when things go wrong? One of the things that you can do there is to be hyper responsive in the sales and marketing process and to use something like AI and automation in order to help you do that. I think it's important to have a human touch as well, but the AI and automation can get you really, really responsive, which is great. Do you actually understand my environment? Whether that's industry, whether that's the size of my business, I think that that's really important and can come in. One of the exercises I would encourage everyone to do is who is your ICP, your ideal customer profile? And one of the things I see that works super well in marketing that nobody ever wants to do for some reason, and the companies who do really stand out, is talk about who you don't serve and what you don't do. When I worked at Microsoft and I'm analyzing, say, MSPs are, their business models can be challenging to differentiate between. Another business model that's really challenging to differentiate between is services companies. So if you take the big four, for example, PwC, Ernst & Young, KPMG, and Deloitte, they're very similar business models. But once they start talking about what they don't do and what they don't specialize in, you'll see eyeballs kind of go to that area. Trust is established, and they're more likely to use that provider. So I would say MSPs, have conversations with your leadership team. What do you not do? And that is going to help your customers understand what you do. am I going to understand what I'm paying for? So beyond the cost, maybe we'll have a price conversation later, but besides the cost, what am I actually getting in terms of value? And this is where, I was thinking about it in real life, like critically. Okay, so if I had that question, am I going to understand what I'm paying for? What would I actually want to see? I mean, one creative idea might be a live dashboard where you're kind of demonstrating to a customer how they're going to get served information about their, say, security performance. Maybe that's, a way of establishing that credibility.
Awesome. Bob, over to you.
All right. Well, it segues nicely into what what you were just talking about, because we all know how people interpret how fast you respond to an email. Sometimes they'll automatically use that as a signal about how quick you're going to respond to their server being down at 2 a.m. Right? I mean, that's just sort of how that works. So let's talk about a little bit about what good responsiveness actually looks like, and as far as without trying to burn your team out. And the other thing I would say is, people are already getting used to these auto AI replies too, right? So there's a level of, okay, yes, we need some automation, but too much can actually send the wrong signal too. So why don't you give us a little bit of insight about those?
I'm going to take this in a different direction than I was maybe planning, but I think it's interesting. We talked about how a lot of MSPs don't perfectly fit the Microsoft partner mold and maybe don't go down that path. One of these, kind of a similar situation, is marketplaces. MSPs are services-based businesses. They don't necessarily lend super well to being transactable in a marketplace. However, if you could figure out how to get your MSP transactable in a marketplace, you're really going to be differentiated against your competition. And the reason I'm talking about marketplaces in the frame of your question is because marketplaces are instant. If you have your services productized enough that there are different levers that somebody could pull and they can put it in their cart and make a purchase, that's a really powerful way that doesn't burn out human talent. But I think, what does good look like today? Good look like today that somebody fills out a contact form. They do instantly get an auto-generated reply. And the auto-generated reply isn't trying to fool anybody, like back to that uncanny valley. You want to be honest. Hey, this is an auto-generated reply. We really appreciate your inquiry. Somebody is going to be in touch in whatever the SLA is, ideally 24 hours. And then somebody does reach out and get in touch. I can say that by looking at MSPs recently, there are some who reached out to me on so many different channels. Like they're in my LinkedIn inbox, they're in my email, they're just tracking me down to see how they can get a hold of me. I don't know. I think just being responsive within 24 hours is the key. I don't think you need to blast somebody. The other thing is really basic contact us form optimization. If you think about pain points, what did Uber do really well as a disruptive business model? They just looked at the customer purchasing journey and they made that purchasing journey way easier. So nobody likes filling out a form. Like right there, are you delighting your customer? No. As soon as I saw the form, I'm like, oh my God, do I have to fill out another one of these forms? So making that form auto-fillable by Google, optimizing for that so that most people can just click to fill, that's really positive. Giving some multiple choice options, keeping it as short as possible. Sometimes in MSPs, we have more technical people. They want tons of information. Realistically, you probably don't need that information in order to get on the phone with someone. So be kind of brutal in terms of how many fields you're asking them to fill out. Stuff like that will make a huge difference. And I would put that in the category of responsiveness. Also think about it from a technology standpoint.
Okay. Maybe room for one more?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. Well, because I really am desperately interested in your answer on this. So, because we're all dealing with this, right? So Gen Z. Because Gen Z is now where all of the decision makers and the B2B purchasers are that's who they are now. So that's a very different relationship that, when you're looking at Gen Z versus, baby boomers kind of a relationship. How they validate brands, how they do fact checking, how they look at peer evidence. I mean, they'll trust Reddit before they trust before they trust a lot of the traditional methods, or even vendor websites, right? I mean, they've got a healthy dose of skepticism and self-reliance on research. So how are MSPs really needing to adjust to, to be better trust building, given the new approach that they're going to have to work with this cohort of business to business buyers?
Yeah, love it. It's so important to understand who your customer is, who it is that you're selling to. So they say by 2030, 75% of IT buyers are going to be Gen Z, and they're going to have 12 trillion in spending power. We all kind of know it's a huge cohort, and we want to be thinking about it. One of the things that stands out to me is that they love buying online. They're used to purchasing in-app experiences. So something like nearly half of Gen Z made a purchase in either TikTok, Instagram, or YouTube last month. So you have to think about that buyer behavior. And this is one of the reasons that while it might be a big maturity leap for an MSP to think about marketplaces, it's good to have it on your future vision map, because that is coming. But one of the stories I love about Gen Z is, I think in December, I was getting ready for a talk, and there's all this holiday shopping research out. And they're saying that 81% of Gen Zs were going to buy a dupe over the holiday season. And a dupe, like people of my generation would call that a knockoff, like a knockoff handbag. The reason I bring it up is you talk about this shift from previous generations into Gen Z. There's a big values difference here. And the value is not that Gen Z is just trying to get something cheaper with buying the dupe. It's that they're genuinely not willing to pay for something that isn't value oriented. They think it's silly, foolish, like it's not cool to overpay for something where that equivalent value isn't being delivered. So if you think about how you want to represent your business, I do think it's even more important. You hear this a lot in AI research right now, is to be outcome focused. And it's one of the reasons I really press on the one sentence case studies and customer testimonials, is they want to see what the value is that's being provided. It's not about the price, but it's about the value.
That was awesome, Ash. And this was incredibly valuable. So thank you for coming on. Kelvin, how was that for you as an MSP walking away?
This is such good content. It's amazing. Like this is the type of stuff well, not me specifically because I'm the CTO, but my marketing manager / one of my business partners. He absolutely needs to listen to this podcast because this is so valuable. It's insane.
Yeah. Ash, thanks a million for coming on. It was awesome having you and getting together. I know your schedule is booked, so I really appreciate you taking a few minutes out. Bob, thank you for joining us as always. Phyllis, same, and Kelvin as well. So till next Monday, we wish you guys all a great end of quarter, and be safe. And we'll look forward to seeing you very soon. Take care.
See y'all.
Bye.
Wonderful meeting you all. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Ash.